Good afternoon. Welcome to the last session of the Eyes on Earth online roadshow. My name is Martijn Seiger and I'm your host today. Yesterday, we shared a lot of information on the Copernicus system and services. This session is in collaboration with the company Verhaert and is about support systems, especially the Copernicus Incubation Programme. I want to remind you that during the presentation, you can submit your questions in the text box on your screen. After the presentation, a selection of questions will be answered. Now I would like to introduce Mr. Nicolas Helssen. Nicolas is the VIIA Business Applications Ambassador Platform in Belgium. He will share insights on how to achieve positive growth and commercial success through the Copernicus program and present some new tools. Nicolas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Martijn. I will now share my screen. I suppose this is all right.
Yeah.
So thank you, Martijn, for the introduction, and hello, everyone. I am here to give a brief introduction of the Copernicus Incubation Program. This is a program that has been running for over 3 years and is coming to an end this year at the end of 2020. And the main goal of this program is basically to support startups, to support small SMEs, and to give them 50,000 euros to boost their startup, which is equity-free money, which is quite important to mention. And this 50,000 euros is money that can actually be used to further develop your Copernicus-enabled commercial application within your own support program or your own incubator. So this is quite important to mention, that the Copernicus Incubation Program itself is not a physical incubator, but we support you within an incubator or accelerator of your choice. So some of the preconditions that we have for the companies is, of course, the use of Copernicus data or services. Another important thing is that there's a real focus on delivering commercially promising businesses. So it's not about technology push or just having a nice technology as a research organization. It's really about how can I bring a product to the market quite rapidly that employs Copernicus data in an innovative way. And so the experts themselves are also requested to look upon this, to look upon, if I were to invest 50,000 euros of my own money, in which Copernicus startup would I do so? A third point is, of course, that it's a joint application with a support program. So you need to apply with an incubator or an accelerator of your choice. So this could be a local incubator, it could be a virtual one in another country. But we do have to make sure that you are getting some business support services from supporting programs, as this is not something that is within the Copernicus Incubation Program itself. Another important matter, of course, is to be based in an EU country, although Norway and Iceland are also accepted as applications. And also very important, a maximum of being 5 years old for each startup. Now, the funding support itself is 50,000 euros, but it's quite important to mention that that is 85% of the total eligible costs that you can present. So we still require 15% of co-funding. This is not a huge amount, it's about 8,000 euros, but it's still quite important to make sure that you have this, this money at the start. So the duration could be maximum 1 year. You could also reduce this to have your incubation last a little bit less if you want to, but the average would probably be around 1 year. And the way that we pay this money is we pre-finance the money through an advance payment request of around 25,000 euros. So you get this money upfront and you can already use this. The final payment of the remaining 25,000 euros, this is only delivered when we receive all of the expenses that you have incurred, and it's actually a reimbursement. It's quite important to note this because in the beginning, of course, it's easy to spend an advance payment, but the latter part of your incubation, you have to pre-finance it yourself because we only reimburse it. So it's important to already understand that you will have to have access to 25,000 euros before we reimburse those 25,000 euros. And the lead time for the incubation support itself is around 4 weeks after the selection results. So we aim to have a quite lean procedure from the application stage to getting the contract assigned for you. Now, some of the application areas that we often encounter are listed here on the screen. Now, most of the applications we receive are obviously in the realm of agriculture. Sometimes up to a quarter of all applications are related to this field. But the goal of the program is really to see how you can solve other kinds of problems here on Earth in many different markets while using Copernicus data. So this could be in retail, in construction. You could use Copernicus data for a variety of different fields. And this is what the experts are also trying to indicate or trying to locate, is that niche market where Copernicus adds value in a way that we haven't seen before. So if you have an idea that fits into this, it is definitely it's definitely the kind of startups that we like to see. An example of this could be stock market value prediction. It's a typical example of how Earth observation data can be used basically to analyze either car parks or the oil in different silos in certain regions of the world and impact stock market value predictions. So it's a way of using Copernicus data or using Earth observation imagery more generally for new and exciting ways and commercially promising ways especially. Now, when we look at the list of application documents that are actually required, you can see a list of the different documents that we request, although the second one from the startup is the most important one, which is the startup video pitch. So this is a video pitch of around 5 to 7 minutes, which you have to submit, which contains all of the information that the experts will basically evaluate. Now, you can film this with a regular smartphone, or you can put a little bit more work into it, because we have received quite professionally made videos as well. Now, it's always about the content of your video, so the format and the high quality is nice, but it doesn't mean that you will be selected, because the experts still have to focus on the content, the commercial content, the business pitch of your video, and that's where the focus will really be. Another important aspect is the support program documents, because here is some of the information about the accelerator or the incubator that is supporting you. What are some of their achievements? Because the incubator you select will also be evaluated for a third of the points, a third of the score. So it's important to think about the kind of incubator you would want to have supporting you as well. Like I said here in the video pitch, so in these 5 and 7 minutes, the goal is to basically talk about the 5 points listed onto the screen. It's very important to show your team, because obviously the team of the startup is something that the experts really look at. How and where you're going to use Copernicus data, and not just list the types of data that you would use, but how does Copernicus data fit with your business proposition? So how does Copernicus data, how is it relevant to the business that you're trying to develop? The third aspect, the business proposition, is is a listing of the need, the approach, the benefit, and the competition. So basically your business plan, which is also quite important. And then we look also at the current stage of maturity of your startup. It's not because you are 1 year old or your startup is 1 year of age or 4. We have had winners that have been very young and some who were closer to the 5-year mark. So any kind of startup can win. The eligible costs that we have, every kind of expense that you would incur that leads to you developing a better solution using Copernicus is eligible. So this could be prototyping, insurance, business consultancy, your employees. The eligible costs are quite wide, as long as it's not interest owed or as long as it's not costs that are related to your support program. The reason for this is that since the support program itself has a stake in being a joint application, we do not offer any costs reimbursed if they're going to your support program. So it just means that if you have an office space which is not in your support program, this is eligible, but not if it is to pay the office in your own incubator, which is quite important. The selection itself happens in 2 stages. We start with a compliancy check of pre-screening your application, which means that we still offer you 24 hours to rectify any mistakes if we see them quite soon. Afterwards, your application will be given to the evaluators. They will evaluate it on all of the terms that we've listed in the previous slide. So the Copernicus data, the business itself, and the best ones, usually a maximum of 14, will be selected for the second stage, which is an interview with the experts. So this is a live interview that we organize by WebEx, such as this. And you're able to pitch to these experts while they perform, a Q&A session of 15 minutes. This is how the final selection is then made. It's based off of the pitching itself. Now we have a continuous enrollment of applications. Like I said, we are coming to the end of the Copernicus Incubation Program, but we still have a final deadline in October. So this is the deadline that will still come up. As you can see, the last one we had was unfortunately a few days before this presentation on the 29th. But to give you a measure, we've received around 40 applications in the round last Friday. So since we only select 7 or 8 true winners out of the 14 live interviews, the rate of success is quite low compared to other programs because the program has become quite competitive. But this is also the goal, is to select basically the most promising startups. Now, of course, there are alternative programs as well, one of which being the Copernicus Accelerator. So this is also a support program which you can apply to. As you can see, the applications for this will close on the 20th of September. But this will offer you as well 12 months of guidance, boot camps, access to mentors, to experts, to basically help you develop a product based off Copernicus and try to support you in bringing these ideas to the market. So this is an application deadline that will be around 1 month before the Copernicus incubation deadline. It's also important to note that the Copernicus Accelerator itself is not an eligible support program for Copernicus incubation. So we don't allow the accelerators within the Copernicus startup program to be support programs for the incubation program in the same vein. So it's important to understand that it needs to be a separate kind of accelerator. And like I mentioned, there is also an open call for mentors for the Copernicus Accelerator, where you will be able to be guided. You will be able to guide and encourage these young startups, to support these startups. You can check the website for more information. There is also a remuneration package for the mentors. So if you believe you fit the profile to be an interesting mentor to these startups, don't hesitate to go onto the website itself. Here, I wanted to discuss a little bit about some of the tools that we've developed. So we've developed a Copernicus brainstorming box. You can see some pictures on the right there, which is basically a canvas with 3 different sets of cards, including all of the sentinels, the associated instruments, what kind of Copernicus services are there, what are some of the case examples based on the 3 years that we've done within the incubation program. And it allows you to organize brainstorming sessions, and it encourages teams and startups to generate these ideas to develop basically new business propositions using Copernicus. So this could be very handy for hackathons or just for internal brainstorming sessions. This is now being finalized at the printing office. And so once this is done, please do check the Copernicus Incubation website or our Twitter, because we will be able to give the first 100 boxes free of charge. So there will be a contact form. You can just fill in who you are as a company or as an individual, and then the first 100 boxes will be sent to you free of charge, so you can use this. So it's quite an interesting offer. On our website as well, we have a Copernicus Business Design Playbook. This contains several chapters with guidance and tools to basically help you go through the different stages of developing an application. So it could be, like you can see, to find the right customers, what are the needs, how do I develop the product itself, and especially at the end, how do I prepare a pitch, which is something that is also useful for the Copernicus Incubation Program itself for the application process. But again, this is something quite useful for hackathons. We've used this at the Copernicus Hackathon as well in Brussels. So this is downloadable from our website. So this is already available for use as we speak. Now, some of the achievements of the program itself. So we've contracted around 46 companies already. 27 of those have been able to finalize their incubation, which means that we've been able to aggregate some statistics. And as you can see here, the average increase in the employees per startup was around 3.5. So each of these startups, most of these startups, have been able to hire new employees, to hire new FTEs into their businesses. And the average revenue increase has been around 100K. So we've had companies that have been able to increase by over 500,000, some a bit less, but there's a wide range of startups that are basically able to sell their services, to sell the product to customers, which is quite interesting to see. And around a third of them have also been able to find private investment capital. So not just funding from Copernicus programs or from regional funds or European funds, but actual private investment, some investments even topping over 1 million or 1.5 million. And most of the companies have also been able to export outside of their own country. Less than half are able to do so at the beginning of the incubation, and after 1 year, this goes up to 89%. So it really shows that during their incubation year, they're quite successful at bringing their application and selling it to other European countries or abroad. Now here I wanted to quickly go through some of the winners that we've had, because I thought it would be quite interesting. Livevo is a German company who is basically doing the vegetation monitoring close to railway tracks. So they're using AI and Copernicus Earth observation imagery, fusing this with artificial intelligence to generate useful information for these end users in the energy market. And this has been one of the more successful companies, I think, also in Europe in this domain. We have Viridian Raven from the Netherlands, who are using Earth observation data to look at the forest, to look at the health structure of the forest. And by doing this, they can actually indicate and see the signals for bark beetle activity, which is quite bad for the forest itself, so that forest management companies are able to target the areas much more quickly. So it's very interesting as well. Deep Blue Globe from Spain uses satellite data to optimize the journey of ships. So they're basically using Copernicus data to look at weather forecast, look at meteorological forecast, how the waves, how maritime conditions are, to help reduce time, fuel, and money on different maritime routes. Sensar from the Netherlands as well, who are monitoring millimeter level deformations for civil infrastructure. Sensar itself is a provider and a supplier to many other startups and companies in the space business who really value their services. And so here as well, they're using radar data and other spaceborne data to basically manage these risks for their customers. Beehive Tech is an Italian company who has developed an IoT diagnostic system. And here what they're doing is they're using this for monitoring Beehive. So the Copernicus data provides added value to identify the most interesting zones for flowering, where pesticides are, how the vegetation is responding within the environment. So it's quite a unique solution as well. For some of the communication channels we have, you can always subscribe on our website. We have a newsletter with frequent updated information. And on our Twitter feed, you can also see most of the calls that we have or other interesting opportunities that might arise in this field. And of course, you can also use our media material. So we have on our media page all kinds of materials which you see here, which can be used. You can see on the right the business design coach book, an NABC pitch preparation booklet, so for your needs, approach, benefit, and competition, and all kinds of material that you can go through. Or if you are a support program, you can read it or send it to your startups to basically explain what the program is about. And that covers my presentation. So I would like to thank everyone, and I think now I will stop sharing my screen as we will go to Q&A. There you go.
Yes, Nicolas, thank you for your presentation. During the presentation, some questions were asked, so I will go through them and then we'll see if you have an answer. And if it's unclear, I hope the participants will ask the next question. It is about the successfulness of the program. So you addressed the number of companies which were allowed in the program. So the question is two ways, like what is the success rate of the program? And well, what's your time horizon in measuring this? And also, can you elaborate a little bit more on the skills of the seasoned entrepreneurs who successfully participated in the program or were allowed in the program?
Sure. So for the success rate itself of the applications, it's quite interesting to see because it depends on the number of applications we receive and on the quality of them. So we've had rounds where we've had over 50 applications coming in, and only 5 or so were selected. And we've had rounds with 35 applications, out of which 8 were selected. So the experts don't really have a quota to achieve per round, although we do have to have around 20 each year. But it really depends on the quality that we receive, and especially on the quality of the pitches. So this is quite important because it links maybe a little bit to the second question of what are the indicators of the successful companies that actually are contracted. Usually it's related to the pitch itself and how convincing this pitch is, together with the Q&A session with the experts. So if there is a team of a technical profile as well as a business profile, because we have in the expert panel investors, scientists, and startup and incubation experts. And so when there are questions about financial indicators or the revenue, the business model, if there's a business profile in the Q&A from the startup that can respond to these questions, then this is already a very good thing. And the same thing with the technical profile, because then, of course, the EO scientist will be able to ask much more targeted questions about the use of Copernicus data. So what we've seen is that the companies that have a team that is very good at explaining this in the live interviews are the ones that make it through. It could be that there are teams that have a very good application in the beginning, but then during the live interviews, it doesn't work that well because the pitch itself is not convincing. And the pitch itself is an important aspect of the entire selection process. So usually we offer the advice to be well prepared and to have not only one person from the startup present at the live interviews, but to have multiple people or the entire team so that the entire team can pick in when several questions are raised. And maybe a second point is the most important thing is to remember that it's a commercially driven program, which means that research organizations or university spin-offs that are only filled with research experts are usually not the most successful candidates. We've had spin-offs from universities that were 5 years old but still didn't have a single business profile or a single customer. And we've had companies that were 2 months old and already had an entire customer list. So it's very, very different. And it's not because the maturity of a certain startup is higher that for this reason they would win. So I think these are two important points to keep in mind.
Okay, thank you for this elaborate answer. I hope, Xenia, this answers your question. Then we have a few questions coming in from Dimitris and James, for example. It's about the team. You mentioned in the presentation that you will grant the incubation program to early stage startups, but also to companies who are around for maybe approximately 5 years. So can you tell something on does the company really have to be founded already? And how much people will make a team? Is it at least 2 or more, or can you explain a little bit on this?
Sure. So the company itself does not have to be founded yet at the start of the application, but there needs to be a willingness to start the company in a EU country. So the company has to be based in the EU before that we can sign a contract. So for instance, we've had companies who, we've had teams who were not yet incorporated in a company that applied as a team of individuals, sometimes even teams of students. One of the requirements is that we need at least 2 team members with a complementary profile. So if you have one business guy and one technical guy, it's sufficient. Beyond that, the team can be 6, 7, it could be 10 people. It doesn't really matter. But so 2 university students, one in business and one with a technical expertise, could potentially apply to the incubation program. If they are selected because they do a really good pitch and they have a really good idea that the investors believe in, then they get at least 2 to 3 months to establish the company, and only then can we grant them the 50,000 euros. But so they are allowed to do it this way if they want to.
Okay, and then on top of that, James is asking a question on also on the founding of the companies, but also is there a limitation on the founders of the company? So do the founders have to originate from European countries, or can anyone with a resident permit in a European country apply for the Copernicus Incubation Programme?
It's a good question, because the company itself obviously has to be registered in an EU country. So it can't be from outside of the EU. So if the founders are allowed to establish this in the EU, it's fine. It's also okay if the company itself is in the EU and some people might still be working abroad because they're doing a PhD somewhere. Okay. However, if the employee expenses are in large part, and by large I mean over 10% of the 50,000 euros, so 5,000 euros, if more than 5,000 is paid, for instance, to an Indian national working in an Indian university somewhere in New Delhi, then this is not what the money is supposed to be for. It's still supposed to be for consultancy or employees, but preferably in the European Union. Now, if there is one of the employees, or at least one of the supporters to your startup that is located in another country outside of the EU, as long as it's less than 5,000 euros, this can be envisaged, but the goal is really to pay EU employees.
Okay, thanks for the elaborate answer on this. Marie is asking a question. She asked, is there an entry fee for companies to join the program?
No, there is no entry fee. The only thing that you have to invest is some time to make a good presentation and a good video pitch. But if you already have a good smartphone, then usually that is enough, and so that may be the only fee you have to pay. But no, there's no fee to apply to the program.
Okay. Then Dimitris is asking a question. You mentioned in the presentation both the programs Incubation and Accelerator. So the Accelerator from Copernicus will not qualify as a supporting entity. So I got the question of Dimitris is, can companies selected in the Copernicus Incubation apply for the Copernicus Masters?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not because, so they're completely different programs themselves. So everyone is still allowed to apply to the different Copernicus startup program projects. So the masters, the accelerator. So all of this can be done in parallel. Now, the only thing I did mention is that, for instance, being accepted into the accelerator, or for instance, being accepted as a winner after a Copernicus Incubation Hackathon does not give you straight access to Copernicus Incubation. Okay. So sometimes there is a bit of a confusion that if they are selected in the accelerator and in the hackathon, that by default they would go straight to the incubation further on. That's not the case. They're very different application procedures and selection procedures.
Okay, very good to emphasize this. Then Carl is asking a question, and I hope he is still online and he can elaborate a little bit more on this. He's asking, how can we find out companies who have tried to apply for or were rejected in the application procedure? Is there a list of participants?
We don't share the list of the people that attempted to apply. The only people that are public are on the Copernicus Incubation website, which are the winners. So the ones that were contracted are on the webpage of the Copernicus Incubation website. The applicants that were not selected are not made public. No.
Okay. And then a question from my side, because now we focus strongly on the applicants for the program, which perfectly makes sense, of course. But how can incubation and acceleration programs get information on how they can qualify to increase their inflow in their programs?
Well, we're working a lot with incubators and accelerators themselves. So what we try to do is, from their side, try to find or identify what their champions are and see how we can get them into the Copernicus Incubation Program to offer extra support. But of course, we sometimes have startups that do not have an accelerator or an incubator. And so in this sense, we try to offer a matchmaking service, let's say, to help them find maybe regional, maybe local, maybe VIIA-BICs, because around 20 to 25% of the applicants come from the VIIA-BICs. But even virtual incubators such as the Parsec Accelerator, etc., are programs that are eligible also to be the support program for Copernicus Incubation. So there's quite a wide variety of support programs that are also virtual, especially in these COVID times. Yeah. That as long as they offer some kind of business support services for a range of time that overlaps at least substantially with the incubation of Copernicus itself, then this is fine. And so usually it's not the most difficult entry barrier to find the support program.
Yeah, okay. The new question coming in from Dimitris. It's about the 50K, which is covering 85% of the costs. He's wondering what can be the sources of the co-financing. I presume that ours are excluded, right?
Okay, so it's a very good question. So in-kind co-funding is not really permitted, because what we'll do at the end of your incubation is we actually request a list of the expenses. So these have to be proven by, for instance, invoices and bank statements to show that something has been paid. So for instance, if a company says, well, we have a research lab from the university that we are using for free, but it is valued at this much and we're using it anyway, and we estimate that its value is 8,000 euros, but there is no invoice or there is no expense involved and no bank statement or no payment involved, this is not eligible. So after 1 year for this 8,000 euro co-funding, we do need to have something, be it some prototyping, some consultancy expenses, some employee expenses, some equipment expenses, with an invoice and a bank statement, so that it is something tangible that we can audit and that we can easily evaluate as well. So usually if it's in kind, it's a bit more difficult to do this.
Okay. And then what about the development of intellectual property? Does Copernicus or Verhaert has any stake in this, or is it fully ownership by the applicant, so the foreground and background IPR?
No, so everything, so in the grant agreement, which we have made public as well, so on the website, under our media page, if you scroll all the way down, we actually already show you the grant agreement and the contract that we would sign with you. And the IP and everything remains solely to the startup itself. So anything you develop, Verhaert has nothing to do with this. The only thing that we ask in your final report is to give an indication of the work that has been done, to give an indication of the algorithms or whatever that has been developed, but none of this will be made public, and none of this will be used by Verhaert or other parties.
Okay, so it's a relatively smooth and low barrier program which startups can benefit from.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I think we have to wrap up in a few minutes. So are there any exclusions from domains, for example, like, I don't know, tourism or...
No. We even have applications using Copernicus data for tourism or for cultural heritage or things related to it. So this is no problem at all. Of course, and this is like in many EU and ESA programs, anything related to illegal activities or basically we allow projects related to safety and security, but not if it's related to military and defense. Okay. And so it's the same kind of conditions that you would see in the other programs. So of course, also the goal is to promote interesting, innovative applications, but if they're related to fields that are a bit questionable, then these will be rooted out during the application stage anyway. Okay, clear. The last question is from my side. I've learned about the program Astropreneurs. Can you tell a little bit about this? Yeah, so Astropreneurs is actually also very interesting. It's an EU program where if you are an individual and you would like to get mentorship for developing anything in space, or if you're interested in using space data or technology for a specific idea, the Astropreneurs program basically offers you as an entrepreneur or possible entrepreneur the access to at least 10 hours of mentorship with an assigned mentor, which is an expert in the space domain. And so there are several calls throughout the year for this, and you are able to either get involved with different events where these experts are present, and they will basically help you, follow up with you, and try to help you bring the idea to fruition. And then at the output of this, you can then enter other, let's say, more serious or more guided programs, such as an VIIA, such as a Copernicus Incubation Programme or an accelerator. So the Astropreneurs is a bit more before all of these other support programs, but it's really the first step into receiving the mentoring in the space domain.
Okay, so in terms of skills development, this might be a logical first step to get your team and to get your own skills here.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I see no further questions coming in. Maybe you got some final words, Nicolas?
No, I mean, now the interesting thing to note now is that in the summer we will promote a little bit more the program itself, the Copernicus Incubation Programme, as well as the Accelerator Program. The deadlines will be after the summer, as we have indicated, but you are always free to either send a mail to the Copernicus Incubation mail that you can find on the website, and we will always answer your questions or help you with the application process if needed.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, this brings us to the end of this session on business support and EO knowledge. Well, thank you, Nicolas, for your contribution. And we hope you get a lot of applications for the various programs you're involved in. So I wish you a very busy summer. And thanks all the participants for being here and for asking the very good questions. And well, let's fill out those applications. And this session also concludes the Eyes on Earth Roadshow, the online edition. So thanks for participating. I wish you all the best. Stay safe and take care. Bye-bye.